much. Thank you so much, and good evening to everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank SADF for making me a part of this wonderful discussion. Of course, I believe that I don't expect that all the problems will be solved by today's dialogue, but of course, it's a very good kickoff, I must say that. And we, the politicians, civil society members, as well as the common people, talk about election every now and then. What is our main concern? Our main concern is very basic. Whether we, the people of Bangladesh, will ever be able to cast our vote and choose our representatives freely, and if so, when and how, especially when the ruling regime clearly crushed down the total electoral system. All the typical symptoms of a country lacking free and fair election are now vividly visible in Bangladesh. Let me give you a short overview of that. According to Economist Intelligence Unit, Bangladesh is a hybrid regime. In VDEM's ranking, Bangladesh has been ranked 147th among 179 countries in Liberal Democracy Index, LDI. Freedom House categorizes Bangladesh as partly free. Bertelsmann Foundation's Transformation Index 2018, BTI, rated Bangladesh as an autocracy. The Civicus Monitor classifies Bangladesh as repressed. Bangladesh was not invited to Democracy Summit organized by Biden administration, as you all know. In Press Freedom Index of Reporters Without Borders, this year Bangladesh was ranked 163rd out of 180 countries. This year, Bangladesh scored 25 out of 100 in Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index 2022, ranking 147th out of 180 countries. As a significant consequence of a non-elected government, rampant corruption has been prevalent in this country. Consequently, this country is facing the most severe economic crisis since its independence. A forex reserve, if all the immediate liabilities are deducted, will merely be enough for meeting the import bill of approximately 2 months. This is far less than the safe margin. The government went for budget support from IMF, World Bank, ADB, as you all know. In South Asia, except Bangladesh, only 2 other countries went for support from IMF. One is Sri Lanka and the other is Pakistan. Bangladesh is facing the highest inflation in its history. It is at least 20%, though the government falsely said it's 10. If we consider it as 10, even if it is the highest in a decade. Cause of this dire economic condition is rampant corruption, as I have already told, and laundering of that money to many developed countries. According to the Global Financial Integrity GFI, every year, between $8 to $10 billion is laundered from Bangladesh through banking channel. If the amount of laundering by non-banking channels is added, total amount will be at least the double of the amount. That is scary. Due to severe corruption, Bangladeshi physical infrastructures are the most expensive in the world. In June 17, 2017, in a news conference, Bangladesh Office of World Bank proved with adequate data that the expense of constructing roads in this country tops the world. They too blamed corruption for that. A massive corruption took place in banking sector, from where government oligarchs took vast amount of loans and became defaulter intentionally. After coming to power, the ruling regime permitted its oligarchs to establish power plants that were very much against the interest of the country. A special act was enacted to bypass the public procurement procedure. Indemnity was given so that no one can ask about it in future. Despite paying huge economic price, Bangladesh is still suffering from power crisis. In this perspective, we are here to discuss about our current state of democracy, economic condition, and human rights situation. Dear discussants, let me start with democracy first. In the last few years, we experienced such an election where people couldn't vote. In 2014, representatives of 150 seats were selected uncontested. I purposefully use the word selected as no election took place in those seats. The ruling party selected the candidates and they became MPs automatically. Not a single vote was needed for that. This so-called election contradicts Article 7, 1, 11, 65, 2, and above all, the very spirit of our constitution. In that election, the so-called main opposition party, Jatiya Party, was forced to play the role of the opposition. 3 ministers and a special envoy to the Prime Minister were appointed from Jatiya Party, which is unprecedented in the democratic world. After that, some local government elections took place, which were also marred by rigging and severe violence. Then another national election took place in 2018, which was, though participatory, was not free and fair. This election is popularly known as midnight election, since ballot papers were stuffed in the previous night. In a survey done immediately after the election by Transparency International Bangladesh (TIB), it found that in 94% of the constituencies, some sort of rigging took place. Most important finding of that survey, that is, proof of ballot stuffing in the previous night, was found in 66% of the constituencies. TIB stated that if asked, they are ready to produce all the documents on which the survey was done, but the ruling party didn't challenge this record. Now another election is knocking at the door, and here the discussion begins. As the main opposition party, our prime concern is whether that election will be such where the people can exercise their voting rights, or it will be marred by rigging and violence as before. Secondly, history says only 4 elections in past 51 years were more or less accepted by all the parties. Those are the general elections held in 91, 96, 2001, and 2008. All those elections were taken place under a non-party caretaker government. Thirdly, the concept of caretaker is the brainchild of Awami League. They boycotted parliament, called hartal or strike for 176 days, organized violent movements on streets, and compelled BNP to amend the constitution and incorporate caretaker government in the constitution in 1996. After assuming power in 2009, they realized that keeping the provision of caretaker in the constitution, they won't be able to continue their ruling. In a verdict regarding caretaker, the Supreme Court left option to have 2 more general elections under caretaker. The government formed a committee to collect opinions from all stakeholders led by 2 senior Awami League leaders. In that committee, Awami League opined in favor of caretaker government. But suddenly the decision was changed and caretaker was removed from the constitution. Hence the elections of 2014 and 18 took place under Awami League government. For the next election, the government is adamant, saying that the caretaker is a dead and buried issue. Election will take place keeping them in power, but after 2018, it's in no way possible for the opposition parties to participate in such farcical election. Bangladesh is facing an acute crisis. There is no democracy, no freedom of speech, no freedom of expression, no freedom of association, and so on. There is a fierce psychosis everywhere. Black laws like Digital Security Act, Anti-Terrorism Act, Special Powers Act are being used to shut the opposition up. In a false and politically motivated case, our chairperson was in jail. She is now in house arrest and the government compelled her to stay away from politics. Our acting chairman is in exile. Our party secretary general got more than 100 cases against him. He was in jail for many, many times. In fact, anyone having different view from that of the government is a target now. Random cases are filed against our members and activists. We call those cases ghost cases. Nothing happened, no evidence, no witness, but case has been filed. You'll be surprised to know that our 4 million people were accused in almost 200,000 cases. Our people are being killed, picked up by the police, face enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killing, torture in police custody, and whatnot. In last 14 and a half years, 2,600 extrajudicial killings and more than 600 enforced disappearances has been committed by the law enforcing agencies. So you can clearly see the human rights situation of Bangladesh now. In last few months, when BNP started peaceful movements, police gunned down 17 BNP activists. Father of a BNP activist was brutally beaten to death. Hundreds of cases have been filed against BNP supporters and activists. Before every single rally, mass transport service was stopped. Police searched the BNP activists' house to arrest them, but nothing could stop people from joining in our rally. They reached the meeting place on foot, rickshaw van, and many other ways possible. These meetings become the meetings of general people, common people, not only BNP activists and members. This certainly gives a clear message to the government that general people started relying on BNP and consider it the only way out from this authoritarian regime. A country which observed its golden jubilee of independence 2 years back is facing a real threat of being a failed state. I'm sorry for using the word failed state, but that is the reality. Extraordinary situation deserves extraordinary measure, extraordinary care. An acceptable and participatory election under a non-partisan caretaker government is a bare necessity in this situation. Such an election will not solve all the problems, as I understand, which have been created during 1.5 decades of bad governance of the ruling regime, but it will certainly start improving the situation and pave the way to a truly democratic Bangladesh, which will ensure all the rights to its citizens. An elected government is more likely to be accountable than an unelected one. So to ensure democracy, good governance, freedom of speech and expression, rule of law, human rights, we need to have a free, fair and participatory election in 2014. Bangladesh cannot afford another 2014 or 2018 election. As another election is approaching, the USA, along with some Western countries, raising their voice for a free, fair and acceptable election in Bangladesh. As a part of this, the USA on December 10, 2021, imposed sanction on the elite force RAB and its 7 officers. This had a very significant effect on stopping extrajudicial killing, enforced disappearance, and custodial torture by this force. Moreover, in recent times, the USA declared its new visa policy aimed at ensuring a free, fair, and participatory election in Bangladesh. Except the ruling nexus formed by political leaders, business people, and civil military bureaucracy, all the people of this country welcome these steps. People of this country believe these steps will catalyze an acceptable and participatory election in our country. On top of that, 6 Republican congressmen wrote a letter to the US President Joe Biden where they strongly condemned the absence of free poll and human rights violation by the government. In the letter, they urged their president to take appropriate measures to give Bangladesh the best chance for free elections, including stricter individual sanctions, banning Bangladesh law enforcement and military personnel from participating in UN peacekeeping missions, etc. Another letter was written by 6 Congress members who urged for initiatives and a feedback method for the steps taken by the US government. Last but not the least, prior to the Bangladesh tour of the UN under Secretary General of Peacekeeping Human Rights Watch and International Human Rights Organization, reiterated the UN to check human rights record of Bangladeshi peacekeepers who worked in RAB and other forces. I want to take an opportunity to thank you parliamentarians who issued letter on this month asking the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Joseph Borrell, to take necessary measures while engaging in constant dialogue with Bangladesh authorities on human rights agenda. 6 EU parliamentarians emphasized the importance of the upcoming 12th parliamentary election in Bangladesh, where the MEPs called on the Vice President for initiatives to ensure a free and fair election under a neutral caretaker government, the release of Bangladesh Nationalist Party chairperson Begum Zia, government's engagement with other major political parties, including BNP, to find a sustainable and democratic solution to the ongoing political crisis. The expectations of these MEPs resonates with the demand of the Bangladeshi citizens. A relevant information may be added here. The European Union ambassador to Bangladesh, Charles Whiteley, said that free and fair elections would be a positive signal for Bangladesh for its readiness to get GSP Plus facility to exports of Bangladeshi products to EU market. I believe US step in Bangladesh has shown what should be done for preventing democratic backsliding of Bangladesh, but it is not adequate. I hope, following the appeal of the 6 MEPs, you should consider steps for holding next general election under caretaker government. I believe this will have a huge impact on resolving the democratic backsliding of Bangladesh. Who knows how important working democratic system is for sustainable and equitable development more than the EU and its members. Thank you all.